Hi, it's Ashleigh from Sweet Dreams Bake Shop, and welcome back to my channel where I make a lot of cake and cookie decorating tutorials as well as give a lot of baking business tips. And we've reached that time of year again where I make all the treats that my daughter requests. And as she gets older, she has more and more specifications. Now, the first thing that she asked me to make was a bust of Mal from Descendants. If you've ever seen those movies, I thought that that was a little bit ambitious and I was running low on time, so I said, "What's your second choice?" And she said, "Well, I really don't like fondant. So I prefer then just a regular buttercream cake that's 2 tiers." And I said, "Deal, that's way easier." She also requested that I make meringue cookies this year instead of sugar cookies, which honestly saved me a whole bunch of hours. So in order to make these meringues, it's super easy. I took 300 grams of granulated sugar with about 75 grams of water, heated it to 245 degrees Fahrenheit, poured it over some whipping egg whites, approximately 110 grams of egg whites, and then created these meringues. And I whip it on high for approximately 3 minutes. My daughter chose these 2 colors because these colors are on Mal's hair, blue and purple. We went for a little bit more of a pastel look, but I asked Aria if she wanted me to airbrush them afterwards so they'd be even darker like Mal's hair, but she said that she liked them this pastel. Now, if you want to make 2-toned meringues, you want to make sure that you really fold in the gel very, very gently, especially if you're using the same batch of meringue, or else things are going to get over whipped. So go really, really gentle and then haphazardly alternate between colors that you put inside of that bag, and it should come out looking all beautiful and melded together like this. And I believe that I used a large French tip to create this piping. I baked these at 185 degrees Fahrenheit for approximately 2 hours, and then I left the oven door ajar until everything was completely cooled down. Now, if you're not going to be serving these right away, what you should do is put them into a container lined with a little bit of cornstarch, paper towel, place them in there, cover it, and they should last until you need them. Moving along to the cake, she wanted hazelnut ganache for this. Honestly, I really would have used more Nutella or hazelnut spread, but I just didn't have any. So if you want to make a Nutella ganache, it's very, very easy. You just need to use a 2-to-1 ratio of cream and the Nutella. In this instance, I used half chocolate, half Nutella, because that's what I had on hand. But if you want a little less hold, you want it to be a little bit more creamy and dreamy, that is the ratio that I use, 2-to-1. So 2 cups of Nutella, 1 cup of heavy whipping cream. And I always do it so that I'm heating up that cream and then just pouring it over top of my ganache ingredients, mixing it together and letting it set up. I did a short the other day on this where I used a completely different vanilla cake recipe. I have my reasons for wanting to find another vanilla cake recipe, and this one was pretty good. The crumb was pretty tight. I still did get some air bubbles here and there, but I don't think that's the fault of the recipe, probably just my execution of it, and it was looking pretty good. Now, it kind of looks like I made blueberry cake here. No. She wanted some purple sprinkles in here, but unfortunately, I did not use the purple round sprinkles because I was using those for the meringue cookies. Really should have used those when you're making a funfetti cake. They're the ones that hold up the best, and they end up really giving a nice look to a funfetti cake. And if you've never leveled a cake before, really just keeping that knife in the same place and rotating your cake is the easiest way to go. Now what I did, you can tell I did this because it's the same colors, is I took that meringue that I had left over. I just did 1 single tray of meringues. We don't have a lot of kids coming to this birthday. And then I went ahead and I added some room temperature butter in there until I got the right hold for Italian meringue buttercream. Guys, I am so excited. I've been working on my buttercream series. I cannot wait to share it with you because I'm constantly wanting to put videos where I can just link you guys what I mean when I say French buttercream or Italian meringue buttercream or Swiss meringue buttercream, where you'll be able to just click it and then you can see the exact ratios, you can see how it works out, and you can see what is best going to work for you. And I finally have come up with something that I'm happy with, but it's obviously taking a long time to put together because there's a lot of buttercreams in the world. So definitely looking forward to sharing that with you guys. A little warning for you guys, this cake ends up looking messy for a long time, and the reason is because at first I thought this is just going to be the crumb coat, so I can literally do this in 1 or 2 minutes, and then I'll just pop it into the fridge and I'll do the nice coat afterwards. But I realized that it probably could just be the outer coat, because I'm going to be putting so much stuff on this anyway. But I really wish that some of my edges were a little bit more cleaned up. I mean, you can see parts of my cake exposed, and ordinarily that would be fine for a crumb coat. But I decided to go with it. Like I said, my daughter isn't really big on fondant and doesn't actually like a lot of buttercream either. She ends up scraping off a lot anyway, so I figured, why waste? And I can save a little bit more time and ingredients. Now, if this were a client cake, definitely would go over this again. It cannot be left like this. However, when you have a little bit more creative control, you could do these things. So now what I'm doing is I'm missing my bubble tea straws. I have run out and I have not had time to go get any more. So I'm using lollipop sticks, which you can see are way worse because they don't cut as easily. And then I'm going to go ahead and put a little base on here. And I'm using a candy apple stick. And I always use these for my dowels when I'm doing a bit of shorter cake because it can really stab into the cake drum and then nothing is going to move. I'm using Cookie Countess airbrushing today, and I think I switch over to some other airbrushing as well later on, but I am using the Cookie Countess airbrush. I will leave down in the pinned comment below. You guys can use my coupon code, and you can also check out their products. I really, really like their airbrushing system. I can't wait to try out the new one as well, so I'll definitely be giving a review on that one too. Now, if you've never seen The Descendants or even heard of The Descendants before, I don't blame you. It's not super popular, but it is on Disney Plus, and it is a movie series that I actually got my daughter started on because I randomly watched it one day, and then she was super, super into it. She loves musicals, loves singing, and it's basically all about the evil villains of princess stories and their children. So this is based all upon their children, so that's why we're going with really dark purples and blacks here. And I'm just using some black fondant pressed into that rose mold. And I used to think that using molds was quote unquote cheating. It's not. And it actually takes a little bit of finesse to work with those molds. If you're finding that there is difficulty in removing your fondant from your mold, just put a little cornstarch on there. And if you're finding your fondant is not meldable enough, then what you can do is add a little bit of shortening, knead it in, and then press it into your mold. And I haven't talked about this edible glitter, but literally put the edible glitter all over, everywhere, and anywhere in all of these treats. That's been my motto. By the way, that is Tinker Dust. There's always a part of a cake that I don't feel like doing because it's the most difficult part, the most challenging part. And really, this cake was pretty simple to put together, but this was probably the most technically difficult, I suppose. I'm just taking some Rice Krispie squares and molding it into a little apple. And then I'm going ahead and putting on some of that leftover Italian meringue buttercream. And I let it solidify up in the fridge for just a little bit. Honestly, with a piece this small, all of that refrigeration, it's not a huge deal. Then I'm going ahead and I'm haphazardly covering this with fondant. I'm being haphazard once again because I know that I'm going to cover this all up with airbrush. The most important thing is to smooth this out as best as possible. And because we're using Italian meringue buttercream underneath, it really just smooths out. If you're using something like an American buttercream, it crusts up. So you are going to want to smooth out that buttercream a little bit more before applying your fondant on there. And if you don't have an airbrush machine, you can easily do this with petal dust. You won't get that shiny quality out of it, but if you want to get that shine, you just mix a little bit of corn syrup with vodka and brush it on and it will stay shiny. And in order to get this to stay on there, you could just put buttercream on there, but I wanted to be extra safe since this was going on a slight journey. So I stuck a lollipop stick all the way through the middle, and then I stuck that through the cake, and I left that top of the stick out so that it could act as the stem of the apple, and I wouldn't have to create a stem. Then I went ahead and I added in some leaves using my leaf punch and placing it on there. I did put a Disney style A on the top of that apple, but it was such a mess that I decided not to show it because honestly, the cutters that I have are not great cutters for that. You're better off just really flattening out some fondant and then cutting it out yourself. And then I went ahead and I added on that little picture of Mal at the front there. It's not an edible image. My friend who I used to order the edible images from, she no longer uses her edible image printer. I don't feel like setting mine up when I don't honestly use edible images that much. So I just decided to put paper right on the cake, but I did protect it by putting a little piece of acetate behind and on the front. And then I just covered it up with fondant. That way we know that no one's going to eat it or touch it, and the acetate is going to protect that from getting too soggy and wet. And now it's time for my absolute favorite and easy roses to make. My daughter specifically requested that I use this cutter and do this type of flower on here, and I said yes, because those are super, super easy. So I just roll my fondant thin, and I did use a little bit of fond dust to dye my white fondant this nice teal color. Really recommend fond dust if you are trying to dye fondant, because gel just gets a little bit messy. And as you can see, all I did was I thinned out those petals, rolled it up, and there you have it. And I added more edible glitter because why wouldn't I? And Aria was super pleased that she ended up with a mostly buttercream cake with just fondant details that she could pick off. Now, instead of giving you a pricing guide for today's particular video, I decided to just talk about how much active time I actually spent on this cake. Now, I've talked about before how this is actually really tricky for me to calculate because I get interrupted and it's hard to stop and start my timer on how long I'm taking to do something. But in this particular instance, it was very clear because I was actually left alone for the full duration. So this took me approximately 3 hours of active time. Now let's get into the subscriber submission of the video. I just love this submission because it has all that gold on it. And you guys know how I feel about gold and glitter and everything that sparkles. So definitely go and check them out. And if you want to be the next subscriber submission of the video, then please follow me at SD Bake Shop on Instagram, where you can either tag me in a photo or send me a photo. Any and all dessert levels are welcome. Thanks so much for watching, guys. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so you can be part of the Sweetie fam. Right now, I'm uploading weekly, so make sure you hit that notification bell so you know when I upload. Also, be sure to comment, request, or ask a question. I love hearing from you guys. Bye!